and a bunch of injuries. The type of pain that I had was so severe that they just kept giving me these heavy drugs. So I ended up in like a fog, not able to function. I started taking the kratom as a tea and I started to feel a little better, got rid of the pain. My mind was definitely clear. I want us to talk to our legislators so they can promote policies that promote pure and safe kratom.
Go to protectkratom.org to tell your elected official to protect kratom.
Hey, and we're live. And yeah, welcome back to Cannaheads ND Season 2, Episode 5. I think I'm going to start dropping the Season 2 part. I think everybody gets it. But yeah, it's your once a week. Did I just address that one? Okay.
What?
Here's what happened. So I go through creative spurts. I don't know how else to explain it. 1 minute I'll be super creative and want to make things. Another minute I won't. And that's what happened the last 3 weeks, essentially. Stuff in life happened and everything like that in between it, but like, yeah. So I guess you can call it creative or writer's block. I don't know. Long story short, everything's fine. We're back. Hopefully we are back for a long time. But yeah. Also, like, Canna-Talk, like, totally picked up that slack, too. So, huge shout out to Greg, for just, keeping news going and updating people and all that stuff. So huge shout out to him for like picking up my laziness. Um, Also, another thing, yes, I do understand that the thumbnail of the last video that Canna-Talk, the Mississippi one, yes, I do know that Mississippi is misspelled. I think it's funnier just to keep it there. Totally a mistake. And yeah, so go laugh at me on the other video that was posted yesterday, where basically the American Medical Association is pretty much begging voters in Mississippi to vote no on a measure that would legalize. So, yeah. Um, we'll also be kind of talking a little bit more about that discrepancy that a lot of different doctors just in general seem to have about it. But yeah, this is basically a podcast. I'm not even gonna say once a week because yeah, I failed at that. For the latest in cannabis, local and national news, every Sunday at around 7:30 p.m. Usually we're pretty on the money for the 7:30 thing. Typically we go for an hour to an hour and a half, and we'll probably be going for hour and a half just to kind of catch up on the other stuff. But yeah, my name is Phil.
I'm Anthony.
And yeah, welcome back to the show, everybody. Like I was saying before, Canna-Talk ND, Radio Free Fargo, 95.9 on Thursdays from 4 to 5 p.m. And that's with host Greg Wilson. The same day, it is uploaded to podcasting platforms. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Overcast. And you know what's really shocking is we actually get a lot of viewers on the podcast, and I'm kind of shocked. But at the same time, it's just because it's easier for people to listen rather than watch. Whereas like YouTube video takes up a little bit more of your battery, whereas podcasts just throw it on and drive in your car or whatever. So yeah, if you find that a little bit easier to do, the Canna-Talk episodes are on the podcasting platforms. I'm thinking about possibly making a separate one for this show. I think that might actually be a thing that I do. But if I do that, I have to remember to hit record, which I did not do. So yeah, I'll probably just download it off of YouTube and just rip the audio out. But yeah. Yeah, so that's that. Other than that, what have you been up to?
Me?
Yeah.
So I've been in laundry for the last couple of years at the hospital here.
Yeah.
And I decided to make a very, very what seems like an unwise choice in going back to environmental services. And I am moving and using muscles I haven't used in 2.5 years or whatever. So I definitely feel twice my age. First week back, so it's like I knew it was gonna feel like death at first anyway. So that's been my life, and then catching up stuff at home, and Kato's been busy. Life.
Yeah, pretty much. I know if I ever, because I work from home, but if I ever have to like work, even though I told myself I never would do it ever again, like if I had to work fast food, I would probably cry. The first week I would probably just be like dead. But yeah. Also, yes, I understand I'm sitting in a rocking chair. My chair broke, so this is my chair until I fix it, like tomorrow. But yeah, that's up for me. So let's get into the news stuff. Um,
I'm adding stuff too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the CDC met with medical marijuana patients to discuss cannabis as a alternative pain therapy that a lot of people who are in for medical or who have a medical card or recommendation, I don't know what you want to call it, that's usually one of the things that they seem to like get out of it is the pain therapy. So Dustin McDonald, who uses cannabis to treat Lyme disease and also serves as policy director with Americans for Safe Access, told Marijuana Moment last a couple weeks ago, that his conversation with the federal agency, the CDC, was productive, with representatives listening attentively, as he explained his personal experiences as well as the advocacy work for the Americans for Safe Access. What's not clear is what the CDC is actually going to do with that information. Listening is one thing, and actually taking action is a completely other thing. But McDonald said that the fact that the agency heard from a multitude of voices about the therapeutic potential of marijuana could push them to take some action at the very least. And if anything, it would be a discussion about the guideline for prescribing opiates for chronic pain. So at least we're getting a foothold here when it comes to pain control and the control of who gets opiates and who doesn't in regards to the kind of pain or the level of pain. There's also legislation that also passed for letting researchers study marijuana purchased from businesses in local or in state legal markets. So it would basically give scientists a little bit more access to cannabis, and because of that, that kind of research could definitely will add to the knowledge that we know about pain control when it comes to that. So yeah, and that for next or
Yeah, we're still doing just light stuff, right?
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so and then we can just jump back to it too. Just so once you're done with your little addition there.
Oh, so this one's just gonna be a quick. I'm not doing
Okay.
like points to it really.
Yeah. So shoot me a link. That way I can get
There. You keep talking about your feds.
it. Yeah, so I honestly think that that because we have a little bit more easier access now with marijuana access, because the ones that were in government controlled facilities, for basically the consensus with that is the amount of THC in those plants and the amount of cannabinoids just in general is a lot lower, and it's a little bit harder to treat pain when you have Tylenol strength amount of THC in it. So that I think that is definitely a good thing that we have more access. We had talked about that a couple weeks ago, and the fact that the CDC is listening, that's a good thing, and the fact that they are connecting it with prescribing opiates, as far as they're definitely looking into it for pain, is another thing, because a lot of the people who get recommendations and everything like that, those are usually for pain. And that's, I mean, there's also like if chemo or AIDS treatment, as far as like the um, the hunger level. But when it comes to most other things that they recommend for, it's usually pain, and it's usually also for quality of life, I would say, just because like this shit's depressing, this shit's sad, this stuff might help kind of perk you up a little bit and kind of make you drive to want to, try to better yourself while being in pain. It's kind of hard. Um, so yeah. Um, Ann Arbor Council tells the DA to stop prosecuting for plants. I think I remember seeing this too.
Yeah. So this is something that we're gonna have to keep an eye on. And towards the end here, I added something about Ann Arbor as well, so we got them twice in this. The city council called upon the county prosecutor's office to stop prosecuting people involved with the use of plants and plant compounds. And Ann Arbor, they're legal now, like legal cannabis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh shit, I'm sorry, I forgot to get you the link.
I'm like searching for it. I'm not. It's like, well, washing off.
It's in the link of the last one that I just added.
Last one.
It's more towards here.
There it is. Got it. All right.
And it was just one of those things I just added into.
Yeah.
But Yeah, again, I just saw it like as I was reading this article, and it's like we should touch on this.
Right.
Grassroots group called Decriminalize Nature Ann Arbor, or DNA2, has been lobbying city councils to take up the issue after some council members were apprehensive about sponsoring the group's proposal earlier this year. So ultimately decided that they were persuaded by arguments centering medical or medicinal, however you want to put that, and spiritual beliefs of using psychedelics, particularly for mental health treatment. So,
Yeah.
as I said, just something that I think we should really keep an eye on, and we'll report back on as we know more.
Right, yeah. And I think, I mean, okay, like I know a lot of people are like, well, I came here for cannabis and
Hmm.
for, that kind of stuff, but I think a lot of people can probably agree that natural alternatives are probably safer than pharmaceutical. And when it comes to, I know with psychedelics like mushrooms and stuff like that, the it helps with PTSD, it helps with depression,
Uh,
anxiety, migraines.
Mushrooms. Yeah, I was gonna say psilocybin is known for handling cluster headaches and migraines for long periods of time,
Yeah. And it and
like
the th
months.
well, yeah, and this is the thing is when I recently, so first of all, tryptamines are what you're normally prescribed as an abortive for migraines. So I know this all too well. Tryptamines are basically, a lot of people think like, after you eat turkey on Thanksgiving, you get tired and stuff like that. That's not what I've noticed it, but tryptamines are usually prescribed for abortive medication for migraines. They don't stop them. They don't like basically when you take them, they don't make it continue and progress worse. So it pretty much stops where you take it. So if you usually, if you see like Halo, or if you have any kind of like visionary changes when you first are about to get one, or in the starting to, that's usually when you should take one. But in most cases, people take them about halfway when it's progressing. But I know with tryptamines, with the pharmaceutical versions at least, when you take them too often, you actually get a migraine from them. And
Yeah.
that's like from overusing tryptamines. But when it comes to psychedelics and mushrooms, for instance, they do stop them. And when you look at your options for a preventative, you have topiramide, which is a really, really bad drug to take. It's usually used for restless leg syndrome and for uh, also, I forgot what the terminology is, but basically when you lose feeling in your toes and stuff like that. So you usually get them for that, but it's also used as a preventative. Then you have your antidepressants, which seems to be the answer for every single thing to doctors. Like, oh, well, have you tried Prilosec, or not Prilosec, but an antidepressant? Like, have you tried that yet? And that doesn't work? Okay, well, at least we tried. And then you also have your blood pressure medication, which is what I usually do. And then you also have this extremely, extremely expensive treatment that you can take that is like injected into your brain and into your usually there's a nerve right here that is what actually causes the migraine. So they usually will take Botox and inject that into that area. So Botox is apparently supposed to stop that nerve from overreacting, and that's why you wouldn't get migraines. Except for that costs about 20 grand.
Isn't
um,
that fucking incredible?
yeah, and the
God.
funny thing is insurance companies more than likely will not pay for it. You have to get pre-approved. There has to be a lot of medical documentation, which, I mean, if I tried, I probably would be able to get them, or get it. But the thing is you have to do it like every 3 to 6 months, in some cases 8. And it's not like a one and done type of thing. It's basically you have to keep dosing yourself with it. And then on top of that, you're, injecting Botox, which isn't that great for you. Not to mention it's like in a weird area, so a lot of people who do end up getting it have like kind of a lump and or skin irritation in that area.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I honestly, if mushrooms could help, I probably would take them. Um, on top of that, had some bad experiences with psychedelics, so I'm not super great with wanting to take them. But if it helps other people, and especially with PTSD and stuff like that, it would definitely be a lot more uh, beneficial to at least look into it, and also to, if people are trying to treat their PTSD with something that has actual evidence of it working, why are we going to hurt them for it?
Especially a natural
Yeah.
remedy.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's interesting. So my my headline is they loom for public comments. Federal deadlines are basically for public comments on marijuana research, hemp, CBD, and drug testing. And this affects pretty much absolutely everything you would ever have to do with uh, the medical industry, just in general. So I kind of broke it down a little bit. I should probably show that screen. The Food and Drug Administration, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, wow, Drug Enforcement Administration, and Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration are accepting input, or were accepting input in some cases, from stakeholders, people, on separate proposed rules that they have published in recent weeks. This comes to do with the Farm Bill, and basically making CBD a little bit more easy to regulate, which is what from a couple of CBD manufacturers and people who sell it that I know, are all for. So it's not that regulation is bad, it's just the comments and the proposed regulation was a little bit off. We had talked about that a couple weeks ago about Delta 8. And so the FDA had proposed some regulations regarding research guidance on developing cannabis-based drugs, and it had gone through the OMB and was released in July, and the deadline is over. It was September 21st, but it covers the basics of conducting federally authorized research for drug development, and where researchers would be allowed to obtain cannabis, and the importance of demonstrating the ability to consistently manufacture quality product, which is weird because when I think it was Ohio is the only state that actually did it government wide, that was that was like the biggest concern that a lot of researchers had, was it's not consistent at all. So that was the FDA's version of it. The USDA, the department, listed 12 areas where they were seeking additional feedback, including information that industry representatives have identified as especially consequential. People have until the 8th to send their input, and I am going to put that link for that if you would like to comment on it. But essentially, the SBA is pushing back, and then it asked to extend the deadline for another 30 days. So I'm not 100% sure what the outcome of that was, but they basically are the ones that are probably the most hurtful to the CBD industry when it comes to what is in process, like in what was it called? When they're actually doing the conversion and actually extracting CBD, the I think it was in work or in process versions of it were illegal, and the Delta 8 extraction and everything like that would be also illegal. So the only people that would be able to create CBD, when it comes to the way that it's processed, you won't be able to drive your hemp plant that has the CBD extracted, but also has, the Delta 8 in it. You wouldn't be able to split that up. So you would have to basically have top-down grower. So you would grow, uh, you would harvest, and you would produce. So that was kind of the biggest one for the USDA. The DEA also had a deadline, has a deadline for October 20th, and it explains how it plans to redefine marijuana to exclude hemp. Among other statutory changes, the DEA emphasized throughout the proposal that the proposed regulations are only meant to align their policies with the Farm Bill. Not really, but some stakeholders suspect that they're trying to stage kind of a uh, beat the biggest guy up when you get into prison type mentality in the new market. So in process hemp and Delta 8 as well. So it's kind of USDA and DEA kind of coming together. SAMHSA not overstepping their bounds, but is drafting rules that would expand workplace drug testing requirements. That one's a big one. By enabling federal agencies and other employers to analyze workers' hair for traces. So that's like really not good
No.
because hair testing goes back way too far and is also very, very hard to actually quantify. So you don't really know if the hair strand that you have, for instance, is going to bring you back 30 days, 45 days, 6 months, or anything like that based on length. And it's not really because hair is like
It grows at different rates.
it grows at different rates, but it also moves like oils from like your skull out to the tip, and because of that, there's really no way to quantify how often or how much of it goes based on your hairstyle. So you might get basically nailed for testing positive from a week ago when really it was a month ago. And that's like the biggest one. And it also, the stupidest thing when it comes to hair testing, they show if you come in bald and like you shaved everything, even if it wasn't for that purpose of trying to get away with the test, they still kind of say that you're trying to not take the test and you're trying to evade the test. And that's usually done in legal purposes. But they basically have said that it could set a stage for racially discriminatory workplace consequences, and that goes on until November 9th. And that's also another thing is different hair, just in general, is a lot harder to test with. So that's that. Why don't I put, because I put the USDA one, right? Is that the USDA one I sent? Yes. So it was the
Yeah.
USDA one, and now do the DEA one. That's the DEA one. So it's gonna do that. Okay, and then DEA. So if you'd like to comment, there's a lot of pre-defined, like pre-set up, pre-typed out things, but I would definitely read before you submit that to make sure that you agree with all of it. And this one is the SAMHSA one. So essentially, long story short, CBD industry is going to go through a lot of changes in the next 6 to 8 months. And I think a lot of it might be what people have been asking for and people have been needing, but it's like way past that, and it's gotten to the point that, oh, well, if you want that kind of regulation, then we're just going to regulate even further and basically kind of hurt the industry just in general. So yeah, make sure to submit those. Again, USDA is October 8th, so that is going to be a Thursday. The DEA one is October 20th, so that is towards the end of the month. That's all I'm going to say with that one. And November 9th, SAMHSA, which is obviously next month. Month and 5 days, specifically. So, yeah, make sure if you'd like to comment on it, and if you do comment on it, comment in the thing and let us know, like, what your views are, what you kind of wanted to say about it. You don't have to copy and paste your comment. I'm just curious about what your views are on it too, especially with that specific industry. So USDA is going to be more for agriculture, can't even talk, DA for enforcement,
all
and
good.
SAMHSA for mental health. So yeah, make sure if you comment, let us know. And yeah, that's all I have to say about it. I'm curious. I know for me, like the Delta 8 thing is kind of a big deal. Um, just because I can understand what people have issues with Delta 8, specifically because it's it's naturally occurring in plants, but it's also you can change, not THC. I think it might be THC, but you can basically convert THC into Delta 8, and that would legalize it technically under Farm
Mm-hmm.
Bill. Or no, actually, that's the thing. It wouldn't legalize it under Farm Bill because it's technically synthesizing that compound, but at the same time, it provides a lot of benefit to CBD tinctures in just general, and also it can have its own purposes altogether. So Delta 8 is probably my biggest one in processed hemp, specifically just because I think it was like a month ago when we were on Facebook. So not even a month ago, it was like probably 4 or 5 months ago. We were talking about how medical, just in general, how certain states kind of require like a top-down growing system. So you go grow, you harvest, and you produce, and then you sell on top of that. That is very, very bad for uh, market just in general. If you want to see how great that works, um, you can look at pretty much every single patent for pharmacies or for pharmaceuticals, um, and how that well works because patent runs out and then all of a sudden you have the generic form of it. But on top of that, how it works, how it helps as far as being able to have more than one facility doing the work. Um, on top of the costs. But if you look at craft beer and wine and all that stuff, you can definitely see that it helps the alcohol industry as a whole, where people are more enjoying their time rather than uh, getting drunk all the time. So, yeah. And I am a huge craft beer person too, so sours are my thing. um,
As I said, I quit drinking a while back, and I just never really wanted to do it again. It's been a few.
I Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I just said it's been a few years.
When I first got into like craft beers, I was like, I don't see the point. Like, I don't get it because it was just IPAs and everything like that. And then somebody like a couple of years ago was like, hey, you should try sours and stuff like that. And I tried it and I was like, oh, this is good. It was kettle sour. And then that's what really got me into the taste of beer. Uh, got drink a lot, and then I slowly kind of tapered off. Now I think I'll drink maybe once a month, twice a month maybe. But I like I don't drink like Bud Light essentially, and I think that's very helpful to me because Bud Light's shit. It's piss
Right.
water.
I have a scotch. Like, I have some 12-year scotch left. I was in
Okay.
Minnesota a couple weekends ago and had a couple sips of that, but yeah, just haven't really fucked around with alcohol.
That's one thing I really want to get into is Scotch, just because like you see basically everybody, there's I don't know anything about it. Like I know that there's like single malt and all that stuff, but just the fact that people are like into the aged stuff, I like, like porters and all that stuff and casket or barrel aged uh beers. So if it was in Scotch form, I'm sure it would be pretty good too. So I would try it, but yeah, I haven't had Scotch ever in my life.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you're missing out, man.
Yeah, that's the thing is I want to get into it, but I don't know. It's also expensive as hell, but so is beer.
Yeah, this bottle, it's like $74.
Yeah, but it lasts a long time. So,
I
well, I
mean, not
guess it
really.
depends on.
You
It
drink it
depends
the
on.
same as anything else,
Yeah,
like any other liquor.
I don't
If
know.
you drink it neat, like I drink liquor neat, so
Yeah,
I don't mix it with anything. I don't ice it, none of that.
really? I would want it at
Yeah,
least iced.
well, that's the thing is like with really good bourbons or scotches,
Yeah.
you're wanting, like you want to taste the craft of the alcohol, you know?
Right. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. I don't know.
that's me.
I like beer. I won't drink warm, but that you would have to be a sociopath to drink it warm. But like what I really liked is how
I don't mind warm beer either.
really
Yeah, never
I
bothered
can't
me.
I can't
But I'm sorry, I
imagine.
didn't mean to cut you off. What were you saying?
No, it's all good. But like I like the fact that they'll with beer it'll be like different kind of like aging process, or they'll add like orange or different like sugars just in general, like fruits that have sugar.
Hmm.
So they'll kind of like mix and play with it, and that's what I really like about it. So maybe Scotch is kind of like that, or no, or it's just like different aging process, and that's it.
Scotch is Scotch is unique because it can only be produced in Scotland, and I think in certain regions of it as well.
Really?
So yeah, let me look at that real quick. There's certain requirements, kind of like how bourbon has to be produced in like certain standards, certain type of barrel for aging.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I was like, I don't know if it can only be in one country, but that's interesting. So yeah, House postpones vote on the MORE Act. And I'm sorry, I might have a really, really bad take here when I say this, but um, it's kind of known it was gonna, it's kind of known that it would be better if it was postponed.
Yeah.
And B, it wasn't going to pass in the first place. It was going to pass House.
Oh
It was
yeah,
going to
flying
die in
colors.
Senate. So basically, the MORE Act would federally deschedule cannabis, expunge the records of those with convictions, impose a federal 5% tax on sales, which would be reinvested into communities that have been impacted by the drug war. Um, it would also create a pathway for resentencing those of them that have been incarcerated, not reincarcerated, um, for marijuana offenses, and would also protect immigrants and/or also public benefits, just in general, citizens, from being denied citizenship over cannabis or from getting public benefits or security clearances due to its use. Um, which would probably be the most sense that any kind of movement in cannabis could ever happen. And unfortunately, the problem there is it's turned into okay. For the most part, for most people, it's not a partisan issue. Unfortunately, when it comes to the national politics stage, I guess is what we're gonna call it, um, it definitely is a partisan issue. And so the problem is basically the House would have passed it. It would probably passed very well. It would probably been on party lines, but it would probably been very little amount of debate, very little amount of changes. And it
What?
would have gone to Senate, where in Senate they would say we're also voting in party lines, so the Republican-controlled Senate would say no, and that would be because it's or Republican-controlled Senate right now. Uh, that's where it would have died. But a lot of the talk that I heard about it, trying to defend that view of being wrong, um, that they just wanted people on record to uh, basically figure out where people stood, especially during an election year. I feel like that would be the wrong use of this measure, specifically because it kind of addresses all of the problems, and it seems to have gotten a lot of consensus between people that it would be enough to not waste this one, essentially, because a lot of bills end up basically going through just to kind of get people on the record. But yeah, it was a commitment that they would bring up the bill sometime later this autumn, presumably after the November elections. So getting people on the record wouldn't have exactly worked then. Um, and it would come, well, it was going to go on the week of September 21st. It was going to go, but it was rescheduled. Um, the lawyer had said basically, which is Sorry, I heard myself for a minute. So the House Majority Leader had said that the MORE Act remains a critical component of House Democrats' plan for addressing systematic racism and advancing criminal justice reform, and we are committed to bringing it to the floor for a vote before the end of the year. Right now, the House is focused relentlessly on securing agreement to stave off the damaging government shutdown and continue to do its job addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. The shutdown's not happening. It's already been fixed. And the job addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, well, that's not really in the House's control at this point. And this is where it kind of is a little bit weird that basically people are having this view. It appears that the decision was influenced by certain moderate Democrats who have expressed concern that voting on a cannabis reform bill while another round of coronavirus relief legislation is still unresolved would be bad optics for their re-election campaigns. Okay. There is a bill that you passed in House, and it goes to Senate. You have passed a COVID-19 pandemic relief bill, and it's in Senate. It is not dead there yet, at least that I know. So the optics aren't that bad. And also on top of that, optics are great for your re-election campaigns, but also action is really good for your re-election campaign. While looking like, hey, you know, I care more about passing the MORE Act versus the COVID-19 pandemic bill, that's not in your control. You are a part of that, but what is in your control is bringing this to the floor for a vote. That's your big optics take. And also people who make decisions based on optics, only on optics, like I've made plenty of decisions based on optics, but not specifically optics. Because yes, sometimes you have to have a opinion or a view that may not be everyone's favorite. Specifically like my view about this. It's not everyone's favorite, but if you sit down and think about it, it's probably, for you, logically true. And that's the difference. So yeah, the Congressional Cannabis Caucus said on Wednesday that she was open to delaying the vote if it meant more members would sign onto it. They don't have an issue with getting it through the House. They have an issue with it going through Senate. But talking to Senate and trying to get the swing or to get the votes in Senate would be a lost cause, unfortunately. But that's where the MORE Act is at. So yeah, and I mean, another thing that I really don't like, and again, unpopular opinion here, addressing systematic racism. Pretty much any time that you're dealing with the criminal justice system or criminal justice reform would in one way or another address systematic racism. So this really doesn't say too much. It just says the same thing, actually, in between the two. That's pretty much the same thing.
So here's my question. So essentially, what it boils down to is they just want to put this off until after free election, right?
Yeah.
So if they're even going to mention addressing systemic racism, wouldn't you think that this would be something they would want? I mean, obviously it's not going to, but wouldn't you think it would be something that it is blatantly obvious that drug or like especially cannabis reform directly impacts systemic racism in terms of law enforcement? Wouldn't you think that this would be something that like a bipartisan push to do so that way it lessens the negative perception of government right now before? So you'd think like Republicans to be like, okay, if there's anything that we're going to hit the nail on the head with, to address people's doubts or concerns with racism by the current administration, this would be it.
Right. And that's the thing is, like, it would help your re-election campaign. I mean, I'm not saying that the MORE Act passes and systematic racism or just racism in
Yeah,
general
yeah.
goes away,
But
but
it
you
would be like
can,
a really good starting point to get some positive perception.
yeah, and you can say at least that you did your part.
Yeah.
That's the thing is no one person is going to end racism. Unfortunately, really bad take when I say this, racism is never going to be over.
No.
Specifically just because it's it's a
It's so deeply rooted.
it's deeply rooted within people. It's deeply rooted within teaching of kids. Like if your father or your mother has racist views, at one point or another, they will say something racist, and the child will be like, "Oh, that's okay to say."
Oh yeah,
Um,
dude. When I was a kid, I won't say what family member of mine because
right.
aside from this one aspect, and this is where it gets hard because like what I'm about to say, that it's exactly what you're saying. I have the utmost love and respect for this man,
Right.
but I absolutely hated the aspect, like the side of him that was incredibly racist. And he came from a family that, like, he came from a generation where they they saw the tides changing and they were part of it, and like say when black people were allowed to use like the same fountains or
Yeah, Jim Crow.
restaurants or whatever.
Yeah.
When that happened, these were the ones that like die hard, fuck you, segregate everything. And those are the people that he came from. So growing up, he did his best to not really let it shine. But there was one time that I came home with a friend of mine, and we just got done like running, playing, whatever. So when I came in, totally innocent minded, walk in, he comes walking behind me, and his wife looked at me and said, "You guys need to leave now. This is my house, mind you." And they were
Oh,
visiting, and like, "You need to leave now." And I was
yeah.
like, "Well, why?" And they're all like, "He's black, and that's not going to go over well."
That's
Like,
exactly it. And that's the thing is it's also in history too. Like, I mean, we're not we're not far along as a society or from the point that racism, well, that slavery, that's basically how our country was built.
yeah,
And a lot of people can't even fucking let go of a fucking statue. If you can't let go of a little piece of, okay, a pretty big piece of metal, um, that was a part of just not even like the person, well, the person was racist, but basically statues. If we can't get rid of a piece of fucking metal, I don't think we can get rid of trying to teach people our history.
here's how I see it, dude. If George Washington, right, he's one of the most respected and revered men of our country's
Yeah,
history. First president, like he was one of the foundation or foundational people of the image and how our country really began, right?
right. Yeah,
If it came out right now that the guy had, a hobby of killing black people or,
yeah,
stringing up natives for target practice, I mean, something just fucking heinous, right?
yeah. It would take a while before we
Every
did that
single
stuff.
statue, every single thing that glorified the man should come down. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. This is not an argument. I don't care about this. Isn't an opinion kind of thing. This is a common sense decency issue.
Yeah,
Okay. I challenge you. I challenge anybody else who watches this. Go to Germany right now. Okay. Yeah. Get deep real quick. You go to Germany right now and you find me one statue glorifying Adolf Hitler or the SS.
actually, in there was a story. I think it was like 10 or 20 years ago. There, I don't understand how this happened, but they were opening up a amusement park, and the amusement park had a little spinny wheel thing, and the design for it was quite literally a swastika.
Like, was that an intentional thing?
Think so. I'm not,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Like, the thing that I can't understand is how did you look at that drawing and are like, nah, that's not a swastika. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah,
Like,
it seems legit.
yeah. So, what they did was the designer of that roller coaster actually ended up getting, I think, a criminal charge. They were forced to destroy it, like right after like the first like sighting of it. I'm sure, like, really, this is a thing. Like in Germany, if you mention, you know, just having statues of Adolf Hitler or even a roller coaster that resembles a swastika, which is just I can't understand how you made that decision. How you spent so much money to building a fucking roller coaster to make it a swastika. Um, yeah, that doesn't fly in Germany, like at all.
And that's the point I'm driving at.
And
Is
that's their
I
history.
challenge. Yeah, exactly. In recent history, mind you.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
people act like World War II was a lifetime ago. Like, I guess we're getting close to a
yeah.
lifetime, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We're a generation. We're really a generation and a half away from such heinous shit. Okay, I challenge anybody who sees this, go to Germany, okay, where they had such atrocities committed within their country and is so deeply rooted in their history, which only, and I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong here, didn't the Third Reich or like the Reich last only a few years,
Yeah.
if I'm correct?
And the way that it came into power, I'm not 1,000% sure of exactly the story, but the way that they came into power was, it was difference in parties, but it was also like a terroristic act, and I think it was burning down. I think it was their, uh, I don't know what it was. They burned down, I think, one of their legislative branches, essentially, and there's a huge conspiracy theory of that, like who did it. But that is how Hitler like came into power.
Yeah, it was something like he was elected, and again, a lot of people. This is what pisses me off is like when you talk about Trump, a lot of people talk about him and some of the most ridiculous, absurd shit. And they're like, no, this is political opinion. Okay. There is a. Okay. You ready for this?
Okay.
That's going to blur it out because of my background thing. Whatever. Okay. Fine line. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine line.
Okay.
Fine line between two political parties or two political opinions. Okay.
Yeah.
Big fucking line between political opinion
And
and
racism.
racist or heinous shit.
Yeah.
Okay, when you're talking about the degradation of human beings, when you're talking about devaluing any human being based on their creed or color or anything along those lines, that's not a political opinion. I don't give a fuck. When you tell me
Yeah.
that this is about like when oh my god, it's just so hard, dude. It's so hard for me to even put into words because it's like there's such awful shit that people are like, but he's just telling it how it is. No, he's telling you how
His
he wish it
bias.
would be.
Yeah, and his bias towards it.
Exactly. Now, sorry, I lost track of what I was saying there. Fuck.
Well, this is that roller coaster that I was talking about. So, this is what it looked like. I'm pretty sure I'm never gonna get pushed by the algorithm on YouTube at this point. Um, it happened in 2019. It was called Eagle's Flight and included a set of 4 eagle-shaped cars, each connected at a right angle at a central axis. How do you look at this and not think,
Yeah.
this is weird. This looks
Okay.
familiar.
To wrap up my point, though, because I'm kind of ranting here, is even the most prolific people of our history, okay,
Yeah.
we will fight fucking tooth and nail and call it our history and say that it needs defended and protected and whatever, okay? And I'm going to touch on the racism part too. This is what I don't understand is how is it that you go anywhere else and they refuse to glorify atrocities or like negative like negative history they don't want to embrace or celebrate, okay? Because it's common sense, it's human decency, okay?
Right.
How is it that we're still saying these people who fought blatantly for racism and the degradation of another human being, regardless of why are we glorifying them?
Well,
Okay, how is that defendable history to us, but you go anywhere else in the world and they say, no, that was wrong.
and that's the
What they
thing is
did was wrong, and
history
the
is
generation has changed.
yeah.
History has changed. So we cannot live like that as people.
Well, history as a definition is basically a story of the past. Wow, I just totally peaked. I'm sorry. The
You're cool.
past and how things have evolved and changed throughout time is history. So, like, something that could have been okay in the past and not okay in the future, that is basically history in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, we thought that going into uh, Iraq was a good idea. And, well, we're still there, but, or I think it's Afghanistan. But basically, at one point, we thought, hey, this is where Osama bin Laden is, or whatever the whole. I can't think of why it was that we went into Iraq in the first place. But,
Iraq is a fucking, it's a can
yeah,
of worms all in itself.
I know. But at one point, we thought that that was the best, and then we had a different president who thought that that wasn't the best. It's basically the way that people view a certain thing is what dictates the direction of which history will progress.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have somebody whose view is that all Mexicans are rapists, well, that is where our future is going to be. So that's, I mean, that's from 2016.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot more since. But it's that kind of mentality and that kind of making uh, an enemy out of a specific group of people or a specific thing is what dictates what will happen in our future and what dictates how our history will be written. But yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
the biggest reason why like that irked me was because again, like I hate people who defend the Confederate flag. Okay, you go to the South, and these are the people who claim to be the most patriotic people in the world, but
2 weeks.
demographically, they support more than anywhere else in the country somebody who blatantly tramples on
Yeah.
constitutionally protected rights. Okay, so I don't understand that because a nationalist point of view is what's embraced instead of a patriotic point of view. And it's
Yeah.
like the reason why it irked me was I just watched a video earlier about this black dude. He was talking about how he doesn't understand how you see people all over the internet, especially white people, saying, you know, don't tread on me, and you know, the come and take it attitude or whatever. But you watch any black people do that and expect the same rights and the same treatment, especially now that they're still dealing with certain oppressions that should not exist today anymore. And all they're saying is enough is enough. And they're saying the same shit. Come and take it. Don't tread on me. Don't tread on my rights.
Yeah.
These birth given rights you have, I deserve as well because all men are created equally by our own constitution, or like
Oh
by
yeah.
our. It just it's it's there. It's in writing. But yet today, even all the way down to law enforcement, we do not treat people that way. And it's like I actually have more, and I've said this before. I have more Republican views than I do Democratic. You know, I'm
Right.
not some fucking, you know, what others consider, you know, snowflake or whatever. I'm not sensitive, but here's my thing: is I fully believe do not tread on me. I fully believe in constitutionally protected rights. Okay,
Right.
I don't understand how I can walk around with a loaded firearm. And people are going to look at me like he's just exercising his right.
Right, yeah.
But you see a black dude walking down the street with a gun with the same rights or the same permits, the same legal protections or entitlements.
And the question
But
is
he's a
it
threat.
registered? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a threat.
Yeah.
If I get arrested, it's fuck you. You're violating my rights. He gets arrested. Well, if he got hurt, he should have just listened. He should have done what he was told. And I'm sorry, but I thought slavery was over. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That, oh, if I could fight the whole fucking world at one time about that stuff, dude.
And that is why the MORE Act should at least make a start to it. Like,
Yes. Thank you for looping back for us here. That was the whole fucking thing we were talking about. I lost track.
well, you know, and I can also loop it with more constitutional rights. I forgot to send it. There you go. I put the link in there, but this section, first of all, is called Rick Becker's views on Measure 2. Definitely did not mean to say that at first. Definitely not. He has some views about Measure 2 and constitutional rights, people in North Dakota. Just to open this one up, Measure 2 is Senate Bill 4001. It is on the ballot for November in North Dakota, and if passed, would make constitutional amendments such as, the Freedom of Cannabis Act, for instance, would make it much harder and much longer of a process, which you might think, well, that's a good thing considering the fact that we had a measure recently, Measure 2. I think they were Measure 2. Maybe, no, they were Measure 3. So, like, maybe in North Dakota, having Measure 3 attached to you is probably not a great idea. But that one was basically for voting rights, but it was, like, really weird and how they said it. But that is the argument, that there are constitutional amendments that go on their ballot that might not be correct for North Dakota, that, to put it very plainly, that the House and Senate in the House, or in North Dakota, seems to believe that is not even something that we should even worry about, that they can take care of it and that it's their thing. So it would basically, if passed, would make it so that anybody who has a measure on the ballot that passes, it goes to the legislative arm, where it will be debated and agreed upon or denied. If denied, would go back on the ballot the next general election, so 4 years, to be voted on again. And if it votes through again, then it'll be real law. So essentially, it's a huge hurdle between people who have disagreements on certain topics and the certain things in their state as a citizen. It has a different view than, I guess, the House of the Senate. I'm trying to keep things unpartisan here. It has a different view of that, and that because of that, they want to be able to overreach their power and say, no, 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 we'll take care of it. Don't you worry your pretty little head. That's Measure 2. So I figured, because Rick Becker here thought that, there's actually a bunch of other people that have, written their 2 cents and stated their 2 cents. So this one was problematic. It would be, okay, there's some things I don't agree with. It's not problematic. It's not like, fuck this dude or anything like that. It's just like, okay, he displayed his view. So I would like to, because I just disagree with Measure 2. I have no, connection to the people against Measure 2 and their campaign or anything like that. Make that very clear. But I feel like I have a response to him, so that's what I'm doing. So You're in there?
Yeah, I'm in.
Okay. So Rick Becker. Here we go. All right. I have to remember to do it this way.
Didn't you send this to me at one point?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna say this looks familiar.
By the way, this was on Facebook, on his Facebook page. I don't know. I re-uploaded it. It's unlisted, not monetized. Don't strike me, bro. But and it'll be commentated over, so you do not have a right to strike this video playing it. You might have a right to strike that one though. All right.
I've been wanting to for about a week or so, and I figure why not do it on the way from Bismarck to Minneapolis
Okay, that was kind of pointless. I just, yeah, I should have cut that. Whatever.
to go visit my daughter. So let's talk about it. Measure 2. Let's put it in simple terms because you hear a lot of stuff about it on both sides, especially for those that are opposed to it. They've got
You hear the same stuff from the people for it. Specifically, you doing that right now is the same kind of stuff that you hear for people against it. There's no bias there. That's just what it is.
pretty passionate stance, and they kind of are making the legislature and legislators look like bad guys or like the
That could be because you are proposing a system in which you have the final say.
Mm-hmm.
That is why the boogeyman is being portrayed. It has nothing to do with, he's in the house, for instance. We're not saying we hate this guy. You might have a different view on that. We're not saying we hate this guy. We're just saying that you're making the narrative that, we're not the bad man. We're not the bad people. We're just trying to do our jobs. You're making it so that it's much easier for you to do your job when the way that it was originally planned, how the Constitution was written in North Dakota and in the U.S., that the people have a say. That was literally what defined us between the U.S. and England. I think, yeah, it was England. Yeah.
boogeyman, and it's really a simple measure. It's very simple. I don't see really any reason to inflame passions about it.
You're inflaming passions about it by just bringing it out like this and saying this is why, with absolutely no examples of why it would be good for the people to say yes. You're just saying, yeah, you know what, all these people against us, they're bad people. They're just inflamed. They're just, they just keep talking about it, and we're just the good people. I don't know what you're talking about. You present no examples of why it's good, other than to say that the people against me are bad.
It's just it's very practical, and it's just a matter of whether you agree with it or disagree with it. So,
yeah, that's you're right. It is, if you agree with it or disagree with it. But the problem there is you're painting it in a light of you agreeing with it, which I can understand you agreeing with it, but you're not really giving the full argument here. You're not giving the full view of everything here. You're giving the view of vote yes, which is perfectly fine. But don't sit here and pretend that you don't understand why people are against it. And if you do understand why people are against it, then why don't you state it? Be completely out in the open about it.
here's the premise for the measure. I believe, and many others do, that it is too easy to get initiated measures to change the Constitution onto the ballot.
Okay, so initiated constitutional measures. I had this planned out a lot better. So, these are the states in which you can pass, as a citizen, a constitutional amendment. They have different, requirements. Some cases in certain states, for instance, where it has to be only about one topic, where that can be fought. But here are all the states. So, oh wait, this is in 52 states. Okay, here's the 26 states of which people have a say in, essentially. So, for instance, if we look at it this way, yes, we have the lowest threshold of signatures to get on the ballot. We're not
What's
that.
our population?
Yes, exactly. It's based on the population. It's 25%, I think, of the population. I think it would say right here. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Oh, internet connection. I understand it's been slammed for 2 hours, but a flying proposal, petition summary, collecting signatures. Number required. 4% of the population. Constitutional amendments. So you need 4% of the population, and that is based on the census. So, yes, in 2020 you need 26,904. In 2010 you only needed 25,688. And it also is what dictates the initiated statute. So if you're just making a statutory change, and the veto as well, which that's a different thing altogether. And that might be actually a thing we might have. When I say we, I don't mean we. People might have to do. Yeah. So these are your constitutional protection or constitutional amendment states. These are the statutory ones. So in North Dakota, you can pass a constitutional, statutory. You can also do something called a referendum. Now, I think I had this up before, but nope, I didn't. Okay. So a referendum. Veto referendum is a type of citizen-initiated ballot measure that asks voters whether to uphold or repeal a law passed by the state legislature, a city council, a county board, or supervisors, or some other legislative body. Is also called a citizen referendum. So this would be basically the people vetoing if the state passed it. Now, you might see a very big problem here when I say that. There's a very, very big reason why it has been on the ballot, and the narrative of which this happened. So back to it.
Much easier yet to get statutory measures, meaning just like regular laws, on the ballot as an initiated measure. So, initiated measure means that the average citizen or group of citizens or organization can get something on the ballot for the people to vote on. That's what initiated measure is. And so if it's statutory, if it's changed law, I'm glad that it's easy. I think that's, I just think it's a nice feature in North Dakota law.
Well, then you would vote no. I don't know. If you want it, if you're glad that it's easy, then vote no.
Changing the Constitution is another story, and I think that it's reasonable for the people.
I understand this is a slippery slope fallacy when I say this, but we start at constitutional. It's not that far of a reach to say statutory is next, and that might not be something that goes on a ballot.
To be able to have that ability. Now, many states don't allow the people of their state to change the Constitution.
Again, when I say which states, these are the states. There are 18, I think is what I said. Yeah. 18 states. Oh, Ballotpedia, you're making this a lot of scrolling. Okay. Constitution that comes through the initiated process. 18 of them have a provision for initiated constitutional amendments. So 18 out of all the states have constitutional amendments. Not a lot of them, you might be right, but at the same time, you're changing the way that works.
Now, many states don't allow the people of their state to change the Constitution. But I do believe that it should be difficult to change, because the Constitution is the foundation for all of the statutory laws, and it should not be able to be changed on a whim or...
So that's the reason why cannabis would be a good thing on the Constitution. It's the thing that will dictate the statutory laws. So if anything, a constitutional amendment would be the best form of action, because people who don't know anything about economics or anything about, just the many things that go into a cannabis law, don't have to act like professionals about it, or they have to act professional about it, but don't have to act like they know everything and write a measure of which they may not know what they're talking about, and then that ends up on a ballot, and there's a possibility that it passes. It's a lot easier to clean it up if it's a constitutional amendment. Sorry, go ahead. Were you saying something or no?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. Yeah. So, if anything, this would make it harder. Yes, it would make it harder for it to be a constitutional amendment. So then people are going to have to go with a statutory amendment. And in that case, it has to be pretty cut, clear, and dry. Every single aspect of a measure, every single aspect of a bill. Without going into the reason why, that is the reason why Legalize ND's measure took so long. Was because there's a lot of moving parts there. And that's
and they sought legal counsel.
Yeah, they had legal counsel, they had input from legislators, they had it all. But yeah, I think time, planning, believing in your fight, and everything like that should be a part of changing a law or making a law. But to say that I'm the jack of all trades and master of none when writing a measure is not a good place to put people into, because that is where mistakes get made.
Whatever the fad might be. And what we're seeing in North Dakota is that organizations, or specifically just rich dudes that live outside the state that have a pet project, can spend not more than $1 million or so and are able to change our state's constitution.
To this day, Measure 3 or North Dakota Voters First, it's a lot harder to kind of figure out exactly where they got their funding, who they actually really were, or anything like that. The only thing that you can figure out is kind of theorize based on the money, essentially, like where did the money come from. But it's pretty easy to kind of not trick the whole system, but it's a lot easier to confuse somebody, and that might be very well what's going on with that. Also, can I ask a question? Has North Dakota Voters First responded to them getting taken off yet? Can we?
An adult will handle Jordan. That is not your responsibility.
Oh, well, let's look at their Facebook page. Why the hell not? September 3rd, they updated their profile picture.
An adult will handle Jordan.
They've just been updating that profile picture. Yeah. They have not said anything yet. I mean, yes, that is a really weird case, and that is a really weird thing, but if I were to say, actually, I think Ballotpedia actually has past measures, and just past initiatives in just general. I'm trying to see exactly where. Oh, I remember seeing it. It was like 6 or 7 tops. North Dakota. Subject restrictions, competing initiatives, starting applying. It was somewhere on here. There was like a list of all the measures that could have, like, that they were circulating. There wasn't many. I'm just saying, this doesn't happen like every day. You don't really see, a new one sprout out. First of all, this is North Dakota. Okay, the amount of people not playing, but in the political landscape is a lot lower than in other states. Even the state over, Minnesota. It's a lot more cutthroat, a lot more groups and everything like that. I can understand trying to protect that before it becomes that kind of a problem. But the problem there is you're not really being completely straightforward of the thing that you're so afraid of.
And we saw this with Marcy's Law, because victims' rights sounds important and good, and it is. Unfortunately, it gets warped a little bit, and things that do not belong in the Constitution get stuck in our Constitution, and then that's where it sits.
Marcy's Law was what he was saying, a victim law that it was passed in a lot of states. That's what I remember about it. Marcy's Law. It was a version of it was passed in California Victims Bill of Rights Act, Prop 9 in 2008. It's basically what was it? 6 states. This is as of 2018. There's 6 states that they were in. It was a state constitutional change, and the right to be treated with fairness, the right to confer with the prosecution, the right to attend key court proceedings. So that was a thing. Yes, it was a billionaire-backed campaign. There was a push to give crime victims constitutional rights equal to those of criminal defendants. But what in that situation was bad? I don't know. Like, yeah. Since 2008, voters have approved Marcy's Law amendments in California, Illinois, North Dakota, Ohio, South Dakota, and Montana. Montana's amendments later were struck down on procedural grounds. I think that might be what he was talking about, how, oh my god, it was bad in one state, so it definitely is going to be bad in all states. Yeah, I don't know what the bad thing about giving victims rights is, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just not something I remember or seeing. But yeah, that's Marcy's Law.
Forever until someone changes the Constitution again.
I don't know.
And then there was the ethics too against wanting to get rid of corruption in government. Everyone would want to get rid of corruption in government. So it's easy to get the signatures, and it's easy to get them.
It is not easy to get the signatures. It is easy if you have a shitload of money. Like, yes, like you were saying, a couple $1 million. You could possibly get just about anything you want. But, like, to a certain degree, people would still have to agree with it. Not to mention, if it's like, we should, everybody, if somebody wanted to make a constitutional amendment, this is just something I'm pulling out of my head, that everybody can only mow their lawns on a Friday. People are going to have to agree, that they think that mowing their lawns only on a Friday is a good thing. You can spend as many millions of dollars as you want to get as many signatures as you want, but at the end of the day, People have to agree with it. I'm just saying. The idea that, anybody can get anything on a ballot and get it passed. First of all, getting something on a ballot is one thing. Getting something passed is a completely different thing. It's two different fights. The first fight is the ballot, and the second fight is to get the yes votes. So you have to prove yourself twice. And if you cheat on one of them, you end up, getting sued. See North Dakota Voters First, if you want the most recent example.
Votes. But what we have now with the Ethics Commission is something in the Constitution that does not
he was talking about Ethics Commission.
belong in the Constitution. It belongs as statute.
Yeah, you know what? The Ethics Commission. Nobody should have constitutional rights when passing laws of ethics.
Statutory law. And then, of course, there's stuff that goes...
It has to be statutory law. That way, we can fight it a lot better than if it was constitutional. That's why.
Along with what sounds good and simple, that is not necessarily good and simple. And we had that with Measure 3 that was supposed to be on this ballot, where the sponsors of the bill made it sound like it's about letting the overseas military, letting them have better and earlier access to the ballot, to voting. That's...
What was the movie? I think it was HBO that did it. Yeah. Essentially, here's what Measure 3, North Dakota Voters First. Was it this one? Or maybe it was the one that was just recent. There was a follow-up to this one. Kill Chain. Yes. Essentially, it was a bunch of people who watched this movie and were like, that's a good idea. We should stop that. It has every single aspect to it. Talking about how how voting machines don't have backup ballots, so like print out ballots. Talking about allowing just people to vote in general, that was a part of it. And I'm pretty sure it was also the foreign voters. It was basically this movie in ballot form. That's what that was.
Sounds fine too, but of course what's hidden in there is a bunch of other stuff that would have completely turned how we do elections in North Dakota upside down.
So the reason why it actually did get removed was because the people that were running it were lying about what it was about. And in some cases, were pressuring people to vote or to sign. And the pressuring would be in the form of gaslighting. That's how they got on the ballot. And they also did have paid petitioners, which might be actually part of the reason of why it went so terribly.
Down, it would have changed everything. And of course, this is another pet project by some very wealthy people who don't live in the state but want to use the state to try and convert, national politics to be something in how they want it, how they think it's right.
Which is basically the basis for everything about politics.
Versus what the people of North Dakota want. So the problem is that it's easy to change the Constitution with just a couple $1,000,000, and
that same $1 million would still be just as easy with Measure 2 in effect. You would spend a couple $1,000,000, it wouldn't pass. You would just have to spend $500,000 because you don't need to get signatures again. You just need to get more people to say yes. And there you go. It's a matter of the disinformation campaign that would happen when it votes no. That would be what it would be. So you would get something passed. It goes to legislator. They look at it, they say, we don't like this person, or we don't think that this is going to help us in any sense and form, so we're going to say no, and then they're going to have some sort of argument saying, yeah, they were just bad people, or this was just a bad move, or, this is the reason why, that, like, they would have some other narrative that would be for, or that would be against it, and then you would have to fight that. That's basically how that would go. But you don't have to get signatures again. So you're plugging a leak that doesn't exist. You have a pipe, there's a leak, and you're trying to plug it right here. You still have the fact that
I'll be there in a few.
paid petitioners is a thing. If you really wanted to fix somebody coming in with a couple $1 million, paid petitioners, that would be your thing. That's how you would fix that.
I think it's something you have to do on your side.
Because then at least you have to get people's, you have to actually care about the people that you're trying to get signatures from.
If you're a billionaire, that's not that much money, by misleading the people of North Dakota. So,
yeah, they were misleading and gaslighting people. That was known actually before they even submitted. That was known when they first started. You could tell based on their social media presence of how they were reacting and how people were acting. Supporters that were acting, they would be like, it was the same, like, script. It was almost like a script. I read the whole thing. I didn't see what you're talking about. Please tell me more. That's gaslighting. That's saying you don't believe, you don't agree, or you don't see it the way that I see it, so you're wrong. That's not how anything like that works.
be stronger, should it be harder to change the Constitution than what it is now? That's the first question. And if you think it shouldn't be harder, then you would vote no on Measure 2. I think it should be harder to change the Constitution.
It should be harder to change the Constitution for you guys. For me, on the other hand, it doesn't affect anything. And if anything, it gives us more power.
Than it is now. Not impossible, and it should still be able to be changed by the people of the state, not having to go through the legislature. So if you think that it's reasonable that it should be somewhat more difficult to change the Constitution of the state of North Dakota, the question is how. What you can do is increase the number of signatures required to get,
which it probably will be based on just basically how the census is going to go. We don't really know.
On the ballot. I don't think that's a particularly good way because, again, all you need is maybe just a little bit more out-of-state money to change it.
Okay.
And get those additional signatures. What you can do is require that the signatures have to be spread throughout the state. So all of it.
So we go from the amount of signatures. Yeah, I agree. I think even one higher. I think this one's our last one. The amount of signatures is one way that you can plug this hole. But then it has to be spread across the entire state. That's a very big jump when you could also just talk about the fact that, okay, there's money and you can pay people for signatures, and then there's this law that basically says how paid petitioners work, and, you know, you could just get rid of that. I guess what I'm seeing is the problem that he's having is the highly organized, highly, you know, highly funded from outside sources type of thing. That's what I'm getting. Obviously, that's what he said multiple times. But the fact of grassroots, you know, there's a lot of organization that you would have to do to get a measure, but if you got rid of paid petitioners, then you would have a lot harder access to the ballot, which would basically filter out all that idea. Because if I was like, you know what, let's mow the lawn only on Fridays. If I wanted to make that a measure, I would have to, straight-faced, go up to 26,000 people and say, I think you should only mow your lawn on a Friday. And they would have to be like actually in my favor to sign. Whereas if you have a paid petitioner, you don't know what they're going to say. They could say, oh, well, you know what? The reason why. There could be a lot of narratives for this. You could just be like, well, it's a noise ordinance thing. That this measure is about noise ordinances. And I'm getting paid per signature. So essentially, if I want to get money, I have to get signatures. And because of that, people would be more willing to lie and be like, yeah, it's a noise ordinance measure. Just sign it. It's fine. Or, you know, it's save the not rainforest. Save the whatever genus of grass. Just throw one out. You know, it's to help save that. There's a lot of narratives that you can spin from only mowing the lawn on a Friday. But what I'm saying is if you're incentivizing people for signatures, and you think that the money aspect of it is the problem, then just get rid of the money aspect of it. Don't make it harder for people. This pisses me off. Alright, I'm just gonna go like one more minute of it, and yeah, it's like 9 o'clock.
Counties are represented instead of just getting them in, say, Fargo and Bismarck or Fargo and Grand Forks. That's not an unreasonable idea. Another thing you can do.
See, the problem with also spreading it out across the entire state is the amount of people in population, how dense the population is. Yes, you're going to get more signatures in Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck, because most people live in that area. Then you have, you know, the rural area, and that by far is actually the hardest part to reach with signature gathering. Because, I mean, you can do like the tree hop method where, you know, hey, you're for it, sign mine, I'll send you yours, and you get signatures, and you basically, you know, turn that person into getting signatures. But then you also have the whole aspect of trying to get out there and all that stuff. That costs money. Just distribute the money in a different area. That's all I'm saying.
To make it harder is instead of a 50% plus one, a simple majority of votes at the election, make it a 60%. So the Constitution doesn't get changed unless 60% of the people of the state vote to change it.
You know, they also said that would be a better idea for electoral college. Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good way to change.
Yeah, I think the electoral college is a great thing, is basically what he's saying.
Yeah. We have another way, which is on Measure 2, and that is that the people of the state need to vote on it twice.
This is what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea behind that is that it's harder to pull the wool over people's eyes if enough time is given that they have to vote on it twice. For instance, if Measure 3 would have stormed through on this time round and passed, at least perhaps it would have given enough time to present the data to everyone, and of course that takes time and money.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that people were stupid in the first place to vote yes on my thing, or on some person's thing, and they have to vote on it again because they're too stupid. More data and all that stuff. That's basically saying, you know, they pull the wool over people's eyelids, or whatever the fuck the saying is.
Oh, the wool over their eyes?
Yeah. First of all, the measure is usually like a paragraph. Okay, let's look. Let's just look at a random measure. Ballot measures. Is there anything being circulated other than, yeah, here's this one. Okay, so like, here's the petition. This would be what's on the ballot, I think. Yeah, they wouldn't write this on the ballot.
Yeah, there's something.
It would be like right here or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Secretary of State is the one who will take the full text or whatever and then condense it down into.
Oh, this is a tax one. Okay. That was completely by accident. Wait. Okay, so this is the yeah, this is the property tax thing, right? Prohibiting all political subdivisions from levying any tax on real property.
Yeah.
So let's put this into perspective. If this gets on the ballot, what? They have, when did they submit this? Oh, I wish it would tell me. Timeline, here we go. So this was March 16th, submitted for review. They need 26,000 signatures. This is the sponsoring committee person right there. Prior to midnight on July 6th, to get on the 2020 July election, or in general election. Obviously, they didn't reach that. 1 year from then, it would be March 25th, 2021. So, let's put this one into perspective. Measure 2 happens. It would probably be a year before it actually turns into a law. But Measure 2 goes through. They don't make it the first time. They go again or something like that. They get on the ballot. They get all the yes votes. I mean, yeah, he's already in house, but I'm just saying, if it gets shot down, he has to do that all over again. Well, not the signatures, but getting it out there and getting it on there. So yeah, maybe we should think twice on this one. By that same regard, right?
Maybe they wouldn't have wanted it a second time around.
Right. I mean, yeah, maybe we all think that property taxes are a bad idea. And then we come to realize that North Dakota's taxes are very, very lax as far as the amounts. That maybe it's not that big of a deal. So we vote no.
Right.
Yeah. That was completely by accident.
And I think that's a reasonable way to change it, is have people vote on it twice. It should be hard to change the state constitution.
Yeah, it should be.
Now, in Measure 2, there is a way to make it so people don't have to vote on it twice. They could vote on it once.
And then get everybody on our side. I would have to say yes. Well, he wouldn't have to say yes, but the majority of the House would have to say yes, and the majority of Senate would have to say yes.
And then, if they pass it, it immediately goes to the state legislature. If the legislature passes it, they can...
No. If he says yes, or if he gets the majority of people to say yes,
can't change it. They can't do anything. They have the measure that the people voted on and approved in their first election. If the legislature, who now is going to be somewhat pressured to approve because that's what their constituents apparently wanted, if they vote on it, then they fast track it, and the people of North Dakota don't have to vote on it twice. So that's like the shortcut.
People on their
Automatically
Facebooks.
go on the next ballot for the people to vote on it a second time, and it goes into the Constitution if passed. So, again, in summary, what it comes down to is, do you think it should be harder to change the state constitution? Yes or no? If no, then you vote no on Measure 2. If yes, then you ask yourself the second question, that is having the people vote on it twice with an option of a shortcut for the legislature to also pass it, is that a good way to go? If yes, then vote yes on Measure 2. If you hate
Isn't that
that
how voting
idea,
works?
That's what I was about to say.
Like, is this necessary?
I mean,
and you think it should be like the 60% or something, then go ahead and vote no.
well, then why wasn't that the idea in the first place? Okay, obviously it's Rick Becker, he might have different views than what's going on. But if you're saying that, then why aren't you voting no? It would directly hurt your side project. I don't know. That's all we got. I thought that this was going to be a much shorter thing, but then once one stupid thing got said to another stupid thing that got said, it just kind of took me off. But yeah, that's all we got. If you like this video, make sure to share and also check us out on YouTube at Canna-Talk ND. So if you like this show and you want more, make sure to check out Canna-Talk ND with Wilson, 95.9 Radio Free Fargo every Thursday from 4 to 5 p.m. And if you're in the Fargo-Moorhead area, you can listen on the radio, is what I meant to say. But if you are not in the Fargo-Moorhead area, radiofreefargo.org, or the night of the show, it'll be on all podcasting platforms, and the day after, if not the Saturday, just kind of up in the air there, it'll be on YouTube. So yeah, check it out. We'll see you guys next week, Sunday, 7 p.m. My name is Phil.
I'm Anthony.
And yeah, this has been Cannaheads. I had something else planned that I should have had this figured out. Oh shit. Oh shit. Is this gonna work? Let's find out. Alright. Bye.